Recorded on the 8th of March 2016 in Noosaville, Queensland, Australia.
Okay, we've come to Glenda. Thanks.
It's not on faith, but you said any time.
Yeah, well, it's related to faith, the question you're going to ask. So.
Okay, I was just wondering what your thoughts were or feelings were on hope.
Yes, that's a good question. The previous group asked the same question, actually. So let's compare these two emotions. Primary difference. Faith is always based on truth. It has to be actually true in order to have faith in it. So, for example, you guys have faith that you can fly. Why do you have faith so you can fly? Because the truth has been presented to you. People have discovered it. Other people discovered it. But they demonstrated this truth. They acted upon this truth. They built machines based on this truth and demonstrated those machines are safe. And as a result, you can trust your life in it now. There's the truth. You follow me? So faith is always based on truth. So it's always got a foundation of truth. Does hope always have that foundation? Definitely not. So the trouble with hope is that its foundation is variable. Right? You can hope for something and it not be true at all. Right? Most of us do this in our daily life. Like you hope the person you're with loves you, but later on they cheat on you. So they didn't love you. But you hope they do. But that's not the same as faith. Faith is based on the truth. Once that person has released the emotion that may cause them to cheat, then you know for certain they'll never cheat on you. But only then. And having hope that something is true when there's no faith to back it up is a pointless exercise. I've done that myself many times in relationships. But it ends up in disaster and also a lot of unhappiness. It's like many of you do this with your parents. You hope your parents are going to treat you good the next time you see them, when 25 other times you've seen them, they haven't. Do you see? Can you see how, surely you'd be better off just accepting they haven't and releasing it emotionally, wouldn't you? Yeah, you would, of course. But we don't, because we're hoping for the next thing. So quite often hope, unfortunately, is based upon emotions we wish to avoid. Whereas frequently faith is always based on feeling emotions, isn't it? You've got to feel emotions to have some faith. So they are very different beasts. Now, I'm not saying hope is always negative. I'm just saying it's variable. In other words, there are some times you can hope and it actually turns out, and there's other times you can hope and it doesn't turn out. Now, to me, as a quality, I don't go much for qualities that are so inconsistent, right? To me, you put your trust in a quality that's inconsistent, in the end, the results are going to be inconsistent, right? You put your trust in a quality that's consistent, based on truth, based on emotion, consistent. Hope, variable. I've tried to avoid emotion most of the time when I have it. I hope my partner's not going to cheat on me, but she flirts all the time. So highly likely she's going to at some point, right? But I hope she's not. And this is what we do with hope. We unfortunately base our life around hope, things that we hope, only to be disappointed later, and then we go, oh, I couldn't trust them. I couldn't. Well, of course you couldn't trust them, because trust only comes from truth being expressed. You can only trust the people who are truthful with you. You know that, don't you? If anybody lies to you, you can't trust them. You know that, don't you? Why do you keep trying to trust people who lie to you then? If you knew that, you wouldn't do that, right? It's because we're hoping that the next time they won't lie to us. We're hoping that some magical thing might happen. inside of them. And the reality is, the closer you get to God, you don't do that. You don't hope that some magical thing will happen inside of a person and that will cause them to do something good. You know that the only magical thing that can happen is they release the reason why they do something bad. That's the only thing that can really happen. So you may have some hope they do that, but relying on that hope is dangerous. So while I have some hope that all of you will go away from here with the aspiration to actually develop your will to love, hoping in that is a pointless hope, because many of you will not choose to do that. Right? Many of you have already made your choice to not do that. So it just depends on you. Now, I hope that you change your mind, but it's your mind. I haven't got any influence over it aside from being able to inspire it somehow. Right? You are the person that needs to do the work. So yeah, I feel faith and hope very different to each other, Glenda, and I actually feel that you can live a long life in hope and be severely disappointed. Whereas when you live a long life in faith, you are never disappointed because you always feel the truth of things. So for example, if I feel in someone there's a predisposition to anger in a certain circumstance, I don't hope that they don't demonstrate that anger. I know that sooner or later they're going to, given the circumstance. Does that make sense? So my faith is they are going to act unlovingly. They are, given the circumstance, because of the emotions in them. And while that emotion is there, now I have hope that they let the emotion out, but I can't guarantee they will, because that's the exercise of their will, their own aspiration to do so. A lot of times I can feel the aspiration too, and it's not there. So if a person doesn't have the aspiration and you know that they're going to get triggered under certain circumstances, they're like, honestly, I can predict events way before they happen. Way before they happen. You will be able to too. Way before they happen. If you can feel everyone's emotion, you can feel their aspiration, the inspiration, what they're changed by, you can feel the emotions in them that they're unwilling to release, you'll know exactly what they're going to do. It's very predictable. Yeah. Isn't that great? Oh, I think it's great. Because it means that I don't trust people. Most of you I don't trust at all, right? And I can't. Because you've not released the emotions which would cause me to trust you. I can't trust you because you've demonstrated that you're untrustworthy. Many times, in fact. Right? With the amount of barrages of projections I get from different ones, many times you've not only demonstrated you're untrustworthy, but you're willing to harm me. Right? So I don't come to an event like this hoping that all of you love me. I have faith, knowing the truth of the condition. I know for certain what's going to happen. Some of you will respond, some of you will not, some of you will project at me, some of you won't. I know which ones of you will and which ones won't. But I don't have any investment in what you do. I'm not doing this because you're going to treat me good or bad. I'm doing this because I want to inspire you. That's my desire being if I have my aspiration, your inspiration won't affect me. That's the beauty of having an aspiration that comes from within your own heart. Your own will to love drives you then, and nothing much else drives you, which is fantastic because it means that you're not influenced negatively. So these two qualities, yep, good question, and you can see they're very, very different to each other. Yeah. So in the Bible it says, faith, hope and love are the three most important things. I don't agree with that statement. Faith, hope and love are not the three most important things. Faith, hope and truth are the three most important things that you can personally aspire to within oneself. Faith, love and truth. Faith, love and truth are the three most important things. Yeah. All right, so this is, I feel, there are some things in the Bible that, while they sound quite poetic and everything else, once you analyse them, you can see that there are logical reasons why hope itself is not always the advisable thing to develop. and it's particularly not the advisable thing to develop trusting your life in it. Whereas with faith, you can definitely trust your life in it. Truth, you can trust your life in it. You do every day. And love, I feel you can trust your life in it, even though most of you feel that you can't. Right? These are the things you can trust your life in, whereas hope, it's not one of those things. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Thanks, Monique.
Yeah, I just want to ask a question about that diagram that you had about faith, truth, and emotions, because I feel very resistive to the previous talk about God's truth, accepting truth. So, can faith? I'm just wondering about the sequence. Can faith be built without truth? No, and I have to feel emotions. So it must go in that order.
They all go hand in hand to a degree. If you think about it, love is an emotion, is it not?
Yeah.
Right? Now, faith, if love and truth are joined at the hip, that tells me that truth has to be also felt emotionally, does it not?
Yes, that's right.
So if truth and love are both emotions and have to be felt emotionally, obviously processing through or working through my emotions is going to become critical in my progress. Can you see?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Is it almost like hand in hand? If I feel my emotion about an untruth and error, that the truth can enter me and that will build faith?
No, faith, it will release your blockages to faith, but it might not build faith. To build faith, you must take some positive action to build faith. Do you understand?
Right.
This is why the 4 of the things we're discussing with you these 2 days are essential to work together with. Remember, they're faith, truth, action and emotion. They are essential parts of your progression. If you choose to ignore one of them, you will not progress. You need to embrace them all. Embrace each one of those particular qualities.
And so then you're saying that they all work together. You need to be doing all together, those
Yep.
4 all together.
And in fact, it's impossible to do them all apart. You can't have love without taking action, because love motivates you to action. You can't receive the truth without changing. Truth motivates you to action. You see, so that they all have to occur together. You can't receive truth without feeling some emotion, both in the sense of letting go of the negative thing that precludes the truth, but also accepting the truth emotionally from God about a certain subject. So you have to feel emotion. These 4 things are essential together. You can't pick one of them and go, I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, and so when you try and take an action in truth without feeling emotion,
It's not going to work.
it's not going to work, is
No.
it? Or any of those things without...
And
all
I'd
of
say,
it.
I'd
Yeah.
personally say that's impossible to take an action without feeling an emotion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
willpower.
Every action you take is driven by emotion generally. Even the desire to use your willpower is driven by an emotion. Well, it's an emotion to avoid the soul-based feeling. So there's an emotion of denial that's driving you to act in willpower. So everything you do is driven by emotion. So the reality is these 4 things need to go hand in hand if you're going to progress. That's why we're discussing them all together in 2 days, you know. Yep. It's good. All right. Well, it sounds like we've exhausted the faith issue, have we? Huh? Yep. Remember a few years ago, myself and Mary did a sort of interview thing at the front of an audience about faith. It was over 2 days. You remember that? My suggestion, go back to that discussion as well, because it'll remind you a lot about the quality of faith. To me, faith, remember Solomon said, and there's a Paget message we discussed from Solomon, remember, about faith too. And Solomon said, on the part of humans, faith is the most important thing. And that is definitely true, because without faith, you won't have an aspiration for truth. You've got to have some faith that having the truth is going to benefit your life. Does that make sense? Before you'll have a longing for truth. Truth will change your life, and truth changes your life more than anything else. Right? Truth is the doorway to receiving love. So it changes your life more than anything else. Truth does. But unless you have some faith, you won't even believe that. You won't even have an aspiration to do that. So faith becomes the first important quality on the part of humans to develop. Now, as we've pointed out to you, you've developed it physically a lot. It's already a quality you know about from a physical perspective. You just haven't thought about it much. Right? What I'm suggesting is we need to have this same belief from an emotional perspective and spiritual perspective. That's what I'm suggesting. David.
Is faith in God's goodness the highest level of faith that we can look at? Because you can obviously have faith in a lot of different things. Is that where we're aspiring towards?
Oh, I feel so. Yeah, faith in God himself as God being a good being and perfect. Yeah, definitely. And in fact, that's why, remember a couple of days ago, why we focused your attention on that issue in the discussion of how you feel about love. Because to me, if you don't have faith in the source of all information, then obviously you're cutting off the source of all information. Now you only have the option of discovering information through your own effort. And that can be a very exhausting process. I know people in the spirit world have been there for 100,000 years who still haven't discovered much truth. You know, that from your perspective they would have discovered, but from God's perspective they've discovered very little, and they've had a huge personal effort doing so. So, you know, that's what we consign ourselves to do. Now, God's not saying to you can't do that, because you're allowed to. It's your will to do that. But I'm just saying there's a better way, a faster way. All of this other knowledge comes to you if you engage the source of the knowledge. If you don't engage the source of the knowledge, now you must discover it yourself if you're ever going to progress. And that process can be quite exhausting. Discovering it yourself rather than having help from God to discover it is an exhausting process. Now, many of you will, many in history have done that process, so it's not like it's impossible to do. They just haven't discovered all of God's truth doing it, that's all. Because it's impossible to without God's assistance, and particularly without finding the way, this emotional way that I'm trying to share with you. You know, if you do it all intellectually, you'll be limited in your discovery of truth. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
It's good. Okay, so that's our faith, and faith, you can see, very important quality to develop. And the thing we need to remember is that if we have a lack of faith, well, that's one thing. And there's all sorts of reasons why we have a lack of faith, and those reasons don't really even matter, do they, really? What matters is, do we want to keep resisting having faith or not, and are we going to do something about it? That's the real question. Do you want to keep having no faith, or do you want to try to develop some? What do you want to do? Now, my suggestion is that's going to depend upon your will, what you choose to do. Has nothing to do with what I share with you, right? The reality is I could be flying around in front of you, and while it might improve some of your faith that it's possible, at the end of the day, if I tell you that you know, you have to process emotions and you have no faith in that, at the end of the day you won't do it. Right? You'll try and find some other way to do it. And this is what I'm saying, is it's just faith is such a wonderful quality, best to develop it as soon as you possibly can. It's best to not resist it anymore. Best to also see the lack of logic we have in applying it, you know, how we have all this faith in all these physical things, and yet we don't believe all of those laws that we believe in the physical also operate in the spiritual or in our emotional state. Yeah.